So next up is Batman The Long Halloween, and I know I'm not going to have a popular opinion with this, but I do feel that... Hey Mad Dogs, thank you for watching. So I recently completed reading the Batman by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale Omnibus. It was a great read, and I'm going to discuss which story I believe is the best out of the three main ones. So if somehow you haven't heard any spoilers about this series for nearly the 25 years that it's been in print, I'd recommend not watching this video. There's going to be some minor spoilers and some things that I need to address. But this book needs absolutely no introduction, and particularly the middle one, Batman The Long Halloween. It was largely the basis of the Dark Knight film that came out in 2008, and that's just the pulling power that this has. It came out as limited series. The first one, The Haunted Knight, came out in 3 issues. The second one, The Long Halloween, came out in 13 issues between 1996 and 1997. And the third one came out a few years after that, between 1999 and 2000. And these stories always get recommended to people that don't necessarily read comics but want to get into Batman, and I can easily see why. Maybe not necessarily the Omnibus, but they all do a great job of getting the foundations of Batman, getting the great sense of Gotham throughout, and also telling a very rich and detailed story without you needing all the kind of continuity that's come before it in their 60 or so years of Batman stories. So I'm going to look at them one by one, and then we can debate which one's the best. What I liked about The Haunted Knight is that even though there's this overarching plot about Batman being quite tired and quite drained as he's quite new into his crime-fighting crusade, I like that all 3 stories could work on their own. They also shine a great spotlight on some of the more underused villains in Batman. So you've got some great work with Poison Ivy, Scarecrow's one of the central villains, and you also get a really good story revolving around the Mad Hatter. Although by no stretch of the imagination is the art bad, I do feel that Tim Sale warmed up the more he continued drawing Batman. And just to sort of touch on the art, one of the groups that I'm in at the minute, we were talking about Rob Liefeld, and somebody said they find it weird that people would criticise Rob Liefeld but then they can absolutely applaud Tim Sale. I don't think that argument has any legs to stand on, because the 2 artists are completely different. Tim Sale works with an abstract style. It's his design, that's just the way everything looks. He does the Batman with the super long ears, which I love. I'm not really a fan of a Batman with short ears. Like, admittedly, the Batman that's on here has short ears comparatively. Whereas on the other hand, Rob Liefeld was always trying to be part of that 90s style that was going through. He's always trying to get into the same clique as Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, and a few of the others. So I don't think that argument has any legs, but I do think Tim Sale's art is one of those things that if you haven't seen it and you're contemplating getting into this book, I'd recommend checking out a few pictures of it first to see if it is for you. Because as I said, as he continues, he seems to get better with the way he draws Batman, with the way he draws Gotham, in particular with Catwoman. So if you don't like it in these early issues, it's not going to get better for you as it goes on, but if you like it and you were blown away, then it's just going to get better as it continues. But Batman The Haunted Knight is great as a standalone, but it didn't really make any impact to me as an overall Batman story. I'd definitely read it again and I'd recommend it, but I'd never say that it's essential reading. So next up is Batman The Long Halloween, and I know I'm not going to have a popular opinion with this, but I do feel that Batman The Long Halloween is actually a bit overrated. A common misconception is that saying something overrated is the same as meaning that it's bad. I don't think that it's bad at all. It's definitely still an 8 out of 10 story, but for years I've seen people talking about Batman The Long Halloween as in the top 5 Batman stories of all time, and I just can't agree with that. Batman The Long Halloween is 13 issues long and it takes course over a year. Batman's a bit more grown into his character in the Dark Knight persona, and he's more familiar with Jim Gordon, and he's got that presence within the city. What I liked about The Long Halloween that the Dark Knight took really well is that Gotham is a dirty city beyond the fact that it's got all these supervillains running about. For the majority of the first part of the story, there isn't actually a lot of supervillains that introduce themselves. You get the sense that they're always there, but it is more about the Falcone family and their waging war against the Maronis. And then in the middle of their gang war, there's this new serial killer that's going out that kills people centered around the holidays of the year, who calls himself Holiday. And what I liked from Haunted Knight is that they gave you this sense that this world is a lot bigger. So he referenced Calendar Man quite a lot, and he made him an integral part of the story, which is rarely done, and I wish more Batman stories would actually include him. What I really liked about The Long Halloween is that it gave you that gradual sense that Batman and Jim and Harvey Dent are losing their grip over Gotham. So yeah, at first Holiday is killing the people that they are trying to get arrested, but then suddenly you get the Joker coming out, you get Scarecrow, you get Poison Ivy, and you suddenly get all of these villains coming out that are 100 times times worse than the mob bosses that they wanted to take down originally. That was one of the things that worked really well in this long format story. But as I was reading it, I did get the sense that it was getting dragged out a little bit, and I just wanted to get to the bottom of who Holiday was. I also knew that this was going to be a story that would turn Harvey into Two-Face, but it wasn't doing it quick enough. And one thing that really actually irritated me as I kept going through it is that you got this sense of Batman just continually telling you that Batman and Harvey Dent are great friends, but you never got that sense from Harvey. I repeatedly got the sense that he did not like Batman, but Batman kept telling us that Harvey Dent is the one person that he trusts, and it's like, what, more than Jim Gordon? It didn't ring true, and it's something that did carry across into Dark Victory that I didn't like as well. But admittedly for me, the reveal of who Holiday is fell completely flat. There was a lot of red herrings, and it was my fault for buying into them, but still, I was disappointed when I found out who it was. It wasn't even a shock, I just didn't really care. Which, if you asked me, I think it's worse for a twist to have no impact at all than a bad impact, because at least then it still have this shock value, which unfortunately this didn't for me. However, I can see a lot of the themes that go through in this Batman The Long Halloween carrying forward into Batman even today. I understand why people say it's a pivotal part of Batman's comic history, but I don't feel like it was the essential reading that everybody made it out to be. It was great and I definitely recommend it, but I wouldn't put it there in the upper echelons of stuff like Batman The Dark Knight Returns or Batman Year One or The Killing Joke, and I even personally preferred Batman Hush and Batman No Man's Land a lot more than Batman The Long Halloween. Now, looking at Batman Dark Victory, I didn't feel like it was a necessary sequel, but it was a great addition to this story. One thing that did bug me throughout is that it didn't seem to know what it wanted to do with Catwoman, and it felt like her inclusion with this was mostly just to advertise her in her own series that came later on. It constantly wanted you to keep asking where she's gone and what she's up to, which, given that we now have the Omnibus all in one complete story, it felt a bit redundant. Whereas at the time it might have actually been a good marketing ploy, it might have got people to buy Catwoman when in Rome, but I didn't really enjoy the continuation of the Falcone storyline. I didn't like Sophia's involvement, I didn't really care about Alberto. I think for this story it would have been a lot better if it focused on what made it interesting most, and that was about Harvey and Two-Face. You got this sense that they still wanted to save him, that there was still something about Harvey that they could bring back. It reminded me a lot about what they did well with Batman the Animated Series when it came to the Harvey Dent storyline. Although I didn't buy into Bruce's friendship with Harvey as much as I did in the animated series, it did really carry across that tone well. The sense of guilt and regret was still there, particularly when you look at Jim Gordon. I really like what they did with this story, particularly with him having a new DA. That dynamic worked really well, and it did make you question a lot about Jim Gordon as a person alongside what he's supposed to be doing as commissioner. The one thing that Dark Victory really excelled at was getting that sense that Gotham is becoming overrun by these supervillains. Now, when I think of Two-Face, it's weird because I do class him as a supervillain, but he's also more just part of the mob mafia side of it. Especially when you're looking at the Batman Arkham games, he always comes across as someone that's just trying to do a big con. He's never trying to overrun Gotham, and I think they really nailed that well, that you got this sense that he is kind of bridging the gap between the old mafia ways of the past and the supervillains that are coming up in the future. For me, they did actually handle the serial killer aspect of it a lot better, because in the first one you kind of got the sense that the red herring was Harvey Dent, but in this one you got the sense that it really could have been him at any time. Especially when Jim Gordon gets caught up on it and Two-Face is the one that saves him, that really brought a lot of questions into it. Like, was he doing it as a double bluff? Was it actually part of his plan to get himself exonerated from it? There was so much that went into it, and I felt like the mind games worked a lot better. And although I did feel like 14 issues was quite long for this story, one thing that I liked that they gave a lot of time to nourish and develop with was Dick Grayson's inclusion in this. Now, Dick Grayson probably is my favourite character in the entire DC universe, and sure, I would have loved to have seen Tim Sale do some drawings with Nightwing, but what we got was a really young Dick Grayson, and you didn't get the sense that Batman actually wanted Dick Grayson to become Robin. It was something that was going against Bruce's better wishes, which brought an extra layer into it, because it's like, is Bruce actually raising Dick Grayson because he just wants to be a good person? Whereas in other occasions you got the sense that Bruce only brought Dick Grayson on board because he needed a sidekick. I found myself comparing a lot of the Dick Grayson storyline in Dark Victory along with the Tim Drake storyline in A Lonely Place of Dying. It gives you that sense that Batman needs somebody, but he particularly doesn't want anybody to be part of this journey. Now, when I look at these stories as a whole, I do feel like there's quite a lot of cohesion that goes between them. The thing that I really like best that this story encapsulates is the sense that Bruce understands now that he hasn't been able to accomplish his goal and the promise that he made to his parents, and that it might not be possible for him to do it at all. That the only thing that he can do is keep the evil at bay rather than eradicating it completely, because as soon as he gets rid of one thing, like the mob bosses that would have facilitated the death of his parents, all of a sudden there's a greater threat like supervillains that have been caused as a part of that. The similarities between what the Mafia did to Harvey Dent and what happened to Bruce as a kid are apparent. And maybe now that I think of it, that might be why Bruce got the sense that he was friends with Harvey even though he wasn't. Like, it was never really referenced at the time when Harvey Dent was fine and not Two-Face, but as soon as he'd lost him and Harvey Dent was no longer a part of Gotham, maybe that's why he felt that he was a friend in retrospect. Whereas Jim Gordon's kind of the hope for Gotham City, Batman and Bruce Wayne and even Harvey Dent are the safety net of what could happen to Gotham City. Even though they may not acknowledge it to themselves, deep down they know that they can't save this city, but they can stop it from becoming a complete hellhole. And I think having that as a theme, particularly when you look at Haunted Night and that's all about Bruce getting these visions of his parents and it troubling him, when you look at The Long Halloween and Batman slowly losing his grasp, and then when you look at Dark Victory and you see that Bruce has finally accepted what's happened and that he may need help and it's not a crusade that he can do on his own, that is a great storyline across these three books. So I think as a story of 3 parts, this is one of the best Batman stories that you can have, but as individual stories, I would have to argue that Batman the Dark Victory is better than Batman the Long Halloween. For me personally, balanced everything that I want in a Batman story. It was still grounded in a sense of realism like Batman the Long Halloween was, but it was tipping more towards what Batman does best and fighting all these supervillains. But realistically, you can't read The Dark Victory without reading The Long Halloween, and Haunted Night works great as a series of short stories, but as part of the bigger story, it does build into that image. So if you did put a gun to my head in order of enjoyment, it would be Dark Victory, then I would have a tie between Long Halloween and Haunted Night. But the great thing is, even though I am debating which one's best, we don't really have to. All 3 stories are here in this beautiful omnibus, but I would definitely recommend picking up this book. It was a really enjoyable story and I read it in about 4 days. I read the whole thing in about 4 days, including the Catwoman stories. This is the best format to get it in and I would definitely recommend it. But if you read these stories already, you might even disagree with me and think that Long Halloween is one of the best Batman stories that's ever existed. That's the great thing, it's all about opinion and it's all open for debate. And I'd like to hear it, so leave your review down below. And please make sure that you subscribe, because when I get to 100, I am going to make sure that I do a tour of my current comic room. Please like this video if you did, and if you didn't like this video, why did you get this far? But let's keep reading comics and I'll see you all soon.